Hello once again and welcome to my humble channel. In today's video, we'll be going over team power, what exactly raises it, and tips and tricks that you may not have been aware of to help you break through to even higher numbers. All of my units currently have nothing equipped and are starting from a blank slate, so we can go on this power raising journey together. So let's start with the basics and begin by taking a look at NG. There's quite a few options on the side, so we'll be going over each one and how they contribute to a unit's power. And with that, we'll be starting with the details page. On this screen here, you can see how much power your unit has so far, and by clicking on the down arrow, will reveal the bonuses they have and the total stats on the right-hand side. You may have noticed the stars at the top as well, and we'll be going over that in just a moment. Onto the second page, we have the level up screen, or rather, the boost page as the game calls it. The higher the unit's level, the more stats they will have, and the more their power will increase. The third section is where the stars from earlier come in. You see, each star represents a duplicate character we have received and placed into NG here. The more duplicates, the higher a unit's stats will raise, requiring 6 to reach their full potential. It is highly recommended that you do not exchange duplicates of any character under any circumstance unless they have already reached 6 stars. The fourth page is where you would unlock bonus stats that would further raise your unit's power and abilities and would be better explained on a unit that has not reached its maximum. So let's take a look at Akira. Each limit level will give an assortment of stats for a character. The first 6 would be the most vital in a unit's power and progression, whereas limits 6 through 9 are a bonus of sorts, and something to consider leaving until your other main units have reached limit 6. You can obtain material for getting up your limits by finishing the quest pass, or alternatively, buying the advanced quest pass, by landing on certain bingo sheets and filling them out over in the assignment area. And from other units if you had a copy of them already. Our fifth section here, we went over in detail in my last video, where I had explained what the best RC sales were for each type of character. So if you haven't seen it, it should appear on screen, and I'll also link it down below. For NG here, we will be comparing both the defensive and offensive sets on him, and there's a good reason we're doing this, as it's very important to understand how units scale each stat. Let's start with the attack set. For this comparison, I will be using the highest rating cells and factors possible for each one, and we will compare how much of a difference it makes to NG's power. So with our best possible attack set equipped, it's time to see how much of a difference it's made. As a reminder, NG's power was bordering 45,000 before adding cells, but with our factors in place, we are just shy of 63,000. Now we'll see what kind of power NG has with defensive cells. And it appears that he has a lower power when compared to the attack set. However, we'll go over why this may not be the case in the last section. And for our second to last section, we have the bonds menu. This one is rather straightforward, where if you own a specific character, you can unlock a bond slot and level it up to 10 times for bonus stats. Lastly, we have the potential section. Now, you may not have this unlocked just yet, or have the required materials, but potential orbs are what's going to really make your unit shine. You can acquire what's needed over in the Force Challenge section by tapping the second option that appears when checking what you're missing. Alternatively, you can find them in the limited time shop that appears when doing dispatches in the assignment area and from the Carnival Exchange area. And once you have the potential unlocked for the unit you want, preferably your main attack team, you'll be greeted by a menu that looks just like this. Now, you may have noticed the menu to my left, and these are what's going to fit into each slot here. However, you won't start with each of them unlocked, and they do cost materials after the first one. First, there's 3 different types of potential orbs here, starting with the health orbs, the attack orbs, and the defense orbs, which increase that stat by a fixed amount, depending on its level. Deciding on which one fits your character is usually decided on which stat they mostly need. However, in this video, we'll be going over the basics with a much more in-depth potential system video, which should hopefully be out soon. But without further delay, let's go over the first point. Potential combos, which are when you group the same potential orbs together to trigger an effect, do not add extra power when you have more than one. This means that your unit will not be given extra power. On top of the stat bonuses the potential orb already has, and having combos would not add to what the stat increase already provides. To put it simply, while you may have that passive activated, you would only gain power from the stats the potential orb gives. For the second point here, I briefly mentioned that each potential orb has a level. The higher the level of that potential orb, the more stats the unit receives and the more power they will gain, as that orb would have given more stats to your unit. Thirdly, if a unit happens to have potential orbs and is being used as an assist, since assist units only give so many stats to a unit, the extra stat boosts will increase your power, but by far less than if they were on the main team. Lastly, I brought this up before, and it happens to be one of the more important factors into raising your unit's power. You see, there comes a point where a unit will have the power they receive from a stat not benefit as much, to the point where it becomes a minimal increase. And I will demonstrate this by comparing what kind of power NG receives with both an attack-focused build and a defensive one. We'll start by applying the best attack-related factors and cells possible and fill every single potential slot to see what kind of power he will have. And with the best possible attack setup, we seem to be sitting at a hefty 67,000 power. Remember our last point from earlier? Let's head over to the potential section, keeping note of how much power NG has currently. We're going to swap an attack cell for a defensive one, and something interesting is going to happen. NG's power seems to have gone up. How curious, and the reason is simple if we go back to our fourth point. Taking note of the cap on power unit receives from stats, this starts to make a lot of sense. You see, NG had received enough attack from earlier and started benefiting more from defense, as he had plenty of attack and his defensive scaling was equally as beneficial. Now we'll compare a defensive build on NG. You see, although NG has a considerable amount of power from the attack set, not all units will scale the same with each stat, and we're about to see something quite interesting here. And with a defensive build, we've hit the 68,000 power mark just by switching off an attack set. And this all ties into our last point once more. Earlier, NG had gained more power with defense potential even though he was using an attack set. And this is in part due to introducing more bonuses to his defensive stat, effectively raising his power more than he would have lost on his attack set. And by keeping these key points in mind, it's good to know that this does not apply to every unit, and they would need a high enough base for the alternative stat, be it health, defense, or even attack, and each unit has a different stat ceiling. But generally, if they have more power with one stat and your aim is more team power, it would be wise to build them on that specific stat. And with this, we'll be moving back to the factor menu for something that will increase our unit's power beyond all that we discussed. And that would be modified cells from the Owl and Centipede Crusade raids. To unlock modifying cells, you'll have to complete the Owl Crusade on Abyss difficulty, and you can find that over in the Combat and Crusade boss menu. You will require either a strong red element team or a friend that has one of considerable power to carry you. And once you've got that taken care of, it's time we head back to the factor menu, and we'll start by tapping on a fully leveled cell and the modifier option. Now there will be two options here, one at the top and one at the bottom. From here, it's straightforward. Once you collect enough materials, you can unlock one of a handful of abilities to add to your units from either the Owl Crusade at the top or the Centipede Crusade to your right. The thing with these modified cells is, not only do they give your units extra abilities, they also increase their power on top of the stats already being given. And I'll now demonstrate this. By heading back to the factor menu, we still have our regular cells equipped. We'll take note of the power we saw earlier and now equip a modified cell. And by heading back to the main page here, we can see that it has gone up. You see, by modifying a cell, units gain an additional 300 power. And if you equip 3 of them, that is an additional 900 power. However, there is a way to increase this even further. If you happen to have a modified cell on hand, if you select it and the star up option, a new menu will appear. And it's within this menu where you can boost your modified cell even further. You see, by offering an owl cell to an owl cell or a centipede cell to a centipede cell, you can use this earned material to raise its star level. Alternatively, instead of using another modified cell from the same crusade, you can instead buy a substitution in the shop and may earn 1 whenever they bother updating the 7-day reward. And in total, for fully starring up a modified cell, you're looking at 800 power being added to the unit just for having it equipped. Which brings us off of the unit menu itself and instead focusing on the character box itself. You see, the total power of your box plays a major role in a research area which rewards you based on how high you can make it. This part is rather straightforward. You see the total power of all your units, and the highest power you have reached will be displayed at the top. The higher it goes, the more team power bonus you receive, and this can be done in 5 ways. The first point is to make sure you are starring up units before exchanging their duplicates, even the lower rarity ones. The second point is to just level them as high as you can. The third point is to raise their bond level, which we had also went over earlier in the video. The fourth point is to focus on your main team, what units you would actually be using, and then every other unit in your character list. The last point is simply placing potential factors on as many units as possible. Now, you will want to focus placing these on your main units, as placing them randomly or all over is not a good idea. And keeping these 5 points in mind, the higher your box power, the more rewards you get, which raise the base stats of all your units. Based on a percentage, this includes both your main and assist team. The second to last way to raise your unit's power is found in the research area under Stats Boost and Attribute Enhancement. You can find the materials required by completing Marathon and in the weekly Diamond Shop. However, the easiest way is to complete as many endless element trial stages as possible. For every 10 levels invested in each element, your total team power in the lineup will increase by 1%. And while it may not seem like much, it adds up quite a bit. And within the same menu, we have our final research area to help boost our team power. You are rewarded based on how many units you star up. It will cycle through each option, starting with a stat boost and eventually giving another one, and so forth. I have balanced my investment, however, have tested what the best result is, and have found this to work the best. Which finally brings us to the last way to boost your total team power, and that is with your ultimate skill. Backing out and heading over to the ultimate skill area, we can find a few options here. However, each one will require full investment before you can upgrade these abilities. By fully upgrading your ultimate skill, you will gain the ability to re-roll them for higher stats, and each one of them happens to have an option for team power in your lineup. After fully upgrading your ultimate skill, you'll want to find the highlighted ability that mentions the arena. This is actually a mistranslation and boosts your total team power in general. Afterwards, you can spend currency earned in marathon combat to re-roll for a potentially higher ability, with the maximum for the team power ability being 8.8%. And I do believe that covers all the possible ways to increase your team power. A like and subscribe is always appreciated, and as always, have a wonderful day.